My name is Victoria Vance. I am 32 years old, and I live in Chicago. I stood in the front row of the cathedral, watching my sister-in-law, Samantha, grab the microphone before the priest had even finished his prayer. She wasn't crying. She was smiling. She looked at the crowd of mourning employees and announced that my brother, Zachary, was the new CEO of our family's $600 million empire. Zachary stood there, chest puffed out, already acting like a king. He looked at me with a smirk that said I was nothing. Just 10 minutes ago, he had whispered that he was moving my desk to the basement. He thought I was weak. He thought I was just furniture in his new kingdom. But he didn't know about the recording my father left behind. He didn't know that while he was partying, I was saving every receipt. And he certainly didn't know that I wasn't just here to say goodbye to my father. I was here to take everything back. But before I tell you how everything flipped like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Victoria Vance. I am 32 years old. The cathedral was cold. That is the first thing I remember feeling. It wasn't just the air conditioning blasting through the vents of the old stone building. It was a coldness that settled deep inside my bones. My father, the man who had built our logistics empire from a single truck into a $600 million Titan, was lying in a mahogany casket just 10 feet away from me. I stood in the front pew. My hands were folded tightly in front of me, my knuckles turning white. I was wearing a simple black dress, the kind that doesn't draw attention. I had bought it 5 years ago for a board meeting, and today it felt like armor. I needed armor. To my right stood my brother, Zachary. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. It was custom fit, Italian silk, shimmering slightly under the cathedral lights. He didn't look like a man who had just lost his father. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. He was checking his watch every 30 seconds, tapping his foot on the marble floor. To his right was his wife, Samantha. She was dressed in black, but it wasn't morning attire. It was a fashion statement. Her hat was wide-brimmed and dramatic, blocking the view for the people sitting behind her. She was scrolling through her phone, hiding the screen with her purse, but I could see the blue light reflecting off her perfectly manicured nails. People were filing past us, hundreds of them. Employees, business partners, city officials. They shook Zachary's hand vigorously. "So sorry for your loss, Mr. Vance," they said. "You have big shoes to fill." Zachary would nod, putting on a solemn face for exactly 3 seconds before flashing a charming, confident smile. "Thank you. It's a new era for the company. We are going to take things to the next level." He was campaigning. At our father's funeral, he was campaigning for loyalty. When people got to me, the interaction was different. They offered me weak, pitying smiles. "Take care, Victoria," they would whisper, patting my arm like I was a child who had scraped her knee. They didn't look me in the eye. They looked past me back to Zachary, the shining star. The service began and we sat down. The wooden pew was hard. I stared at the back of the priest's head, trying to process that my father was gone. Really gone. No more late-night calls. No more cigar smoke in the office. No more silence that felt like a test I was constantly failing. Zachary leaned in close to me. I thought he was going to offer comfort. I thought, for a split second, that he was going to say, "We'll get through this, sis." His breath smelled of mints and expensive scotch. "Hey," he whispered, his voice low but sharp. "I've been looking at the org chart." I turned my head slightly, shocked. "Zachary, we are in the middle of Mass," he ignored me. "I'm moving the executive offices to the top floor. Open concept. Lots of glass. I need your office, Vic." My stomach dropped. "My office? I've been in that office next to Dad for 8 years. "Yeah, well, it's prime real estate," he said, adjusting his tie. "I need it for the new VP of strategy I'm hiring. One of my frat buddies, great guy, innovative." I stared at him. "So where do I go?" He smirked. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a bully who knows the teacher isn't watching. "There's that storage space in the basement level, near the server room. It's quiet down there. You like quiet, right? It'll be perfect for you to handle the paperwork. You're good at paperwork." He turned back to face the altar, looking pious and solemn as the priest read a psalm about justice. I felt like I had been slapped. The basement. He was putting me in the basement. I wasn't his partner. I wasn't his sister. To him, I was a glorified secretary. I was something to be tucked away, out of sight, so I wouldn't ruin the aesthetic of his new, shiny regime. I looked past him to Samantha. She wasn't even pretending to listen to the priest. She was looking up at the ceiling, pointing a finger at the stained glass windows. She leaned over to Zachary, whispering loudly enough for me to hear. "Those windows," she hissed. "The blue and gold ones. I want that pattern for the lobby of the new suite, but modern, maybe in neon. Write it down, Zachary whispered back. We have the budget now. They were redecorating. My father wasn't even in the ground yet, and they were stripping the company for parts to build their own playground. I looked around the cathedral. I saw the faces of the truck drivers in the back rows. Men with calloused hands who had worked for my father for 30 years. They looked scared. They knew what Zachary was. They knew their pensions and their livelihoods were in the hands of a boy who had never worked a hard day in his life. Then I looked back at my brother and his wife. They were holding hands now, but it wasn't for comfort. It was a victory clasp. They were squeezing each other's hands in anticipation. They were waiting for the moment they could walk out of here and sign the checks. That was the moment it hit me. All those years, I thought we were a family. I thought that despite the dysfunction, despite the coldness, we were a unit. I thought that when the end came, we would stand together. I was wrong. I wasn't family to them. I was an obstacle. I was an appliance. I was a piece of furniture that had served its purpose and was now out of style. They didn't see me. They never saw me. They saw a woman who fixed problems, who signed forms, who stayed late. But they didn't see Victoria. A single tear rolled down my cheek. It wasn't for my father anymore. It was for me. It was for the stupid, naive hope I had held onto that maybe, just maybe, my brother loved me. He didn't. I wiped the tear away with a furious swipe of my hand. I sat up straighter. The coldness in the cathedral didn't bother me anymore. Because inside my chest, my heart was turning into ice. If they wanted to treat me like furniture, fine. But they were about to learn that even furniture can be heavy. And when it falls on you, it can crush you. To understand why Zachary's betrayal hurt so much, you have to understand the last 10 years of my life. You have to understand what I gave up. Our company, Vance Logistics, moves freight. We have fleets of trucks, cargo ships, and warehouses all over the Midwest. It is a gritty, hard business. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't take holidays. For a decade, I was the engine that kept it running. I remember a night 3 years ago. It was Christmas Eve. A massive snowstorm had hit the coast, grounding our air freight and stalling the trucks on the highway. We had millions of dollars in medical supplies that needed to get to hospitals in Chicago by morning. My father was at his country club, having a holiday dinner. Zachary was in Aspen, skiing with his friends. I was in the server room. The tracking system had crashed because of the volume of rerouting requests. The IT director was on vacation and wasn't answering his phone. I was the only one there. I sat on the cold floor, surrounded by humming black boxes and flashing green lights, with a laptop on my knees. I spent 6 hours manually rerouting drivers. I called them one by one. Hey Jerry, I said, my voice hoarse. I know the roads are bad, but these are dialysis machines. Can you take the southern route? I'll authorize triple overtime pay. Miss Victoria, Jerry's voice crackled over the radio. It's Christmas Eve, I want to be with my kids. I know, Jerry, I said, fighting back tears of exhaustion. I'm here too. I'm alone in the office. Please, do this for me. He did it. They all did it. Not for my father, not for the company. They did it because I asked. They knew I was there in the trenches with them. By 4 a.m., the crisis was averted. The supplies were delivered. I fell asleep at my desk, my head resting on a stack of invoices. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke up to a notification on my phone. It was an Instagram post from Zachary. He was holding a glass of champagne, standing on a snowy mountain peak. The caption read, "Another successful year for the Vance Empire, killing the game, number CE all lifestyle." He got 2,000 likes. I got a stiff neck and a cold cup of coffee. That was the pattern. I was the fixer. I was the shadow. I handled the union negotiations. When the dock workers threatened to strike because of safety conditions, my father wanted to fire them all. Zachary wanted to hire private security to intimidate them. I went down to the docks. I wore steel-toed boots and a hard hat. I sat in the break room with the union reps, drinking terrible vending machine coffee. I listened to them. They didn't want more money. They wanted better harnesses and heat in the winter. I drafted the new contract myself. I saved the company $12 million in lost productivity and potential lawsuits. When the contract was signed, my father took Zachary out for a steak dinner to celebrate. "Good job keeping the peace, son," he told Zachary. Zachary hadn't even read the contract. He nodded and ordered the most expensive wine on the menu. I ate a sandwich at my desk and filed the paperwork. I rebooted servers mid-crisis. I rescued shipments stuck in customs in China by waking up at 3 a.m. to call the port authorities, using the Mandarin phrases I had taught myself just for the job. I caught accounting errors that would have triggered IRS audits. I believed in merit. I was raised on the American dream, that if you work hard, if you keep your head down and do the right thing, you will be rewarded. I thought my father was watching. I thought he was testing me, grooming me. I thought my silence was dignified. I thought that by not bragging, by not demanding credit, I was showing true leadership. But in my family, silence wasn't seen as strength. It was seen as submission. I became invisible. To the outside world, Vance Logistics was my father's brilliance and Zachary's future. I was just the sister, the one who answered the emails, the one who made sure the coffee was fresh. I remember one meeting with a potential investor. He asked a specific question about our fuel hedging strategy. Zachary froze. He had no idea what fuel hedging was. He looked at me, panic in his eyes. I stepped in. I explained our strategy clearly using data and projections. I saved him. The investor nodded, impressed. Then he turned to Zachary and said, "You're lucky to have such a smart assistant, Zach." Zachary laughed. "Yeah, she's great, keeps me organized." He didn't correct him. He didn't say, "She's not my assistant, she's the COO." He just took the credit and let me remain small. I swallowed my pride. I told myself it was for the good of the company. I told myself that titles didn't matter as long as the work got done. But sitting in that cathedral, hearing Zachary talk about putting me in the basement, I realized the truth. I had made myself invisible. I had made it easy for them to erase me. I had done all the work and handed them the keys, hoping they would say thank you. They didn't say thank you. They just changed the locks. The funeral was painful, but the real death happened 3 days earlier. My father died on a Tuesday morning. It was a heart attack. Sudden, quick. By the time I got to the hospital, he was already gone. I spent the first few hours in a daze, signing release forms, talking to the coroner, calling the funeral home. I was operating on autopilot. Zachary was nowhere to be found. He wasn't answering his phone. I finally drove back to the headquarters around 6 p.m. I needed to tell the staff. I needed to secure the building. When I walked into the executive suite, I heard noise, loud voices, laughter. I walked into my father's office. The body wasn't even cold yet, and they were already there. Zachary was sitting in my father's leather chair. He had his feet up on the desk my father had built by hand 40 years ago. He was spinning a letter opener between his fingers. Samantha was standing by the window, holding a tape measure. Peter, my father's chief of staff, was standing in the corner. Peter was 65 years old. He had been with my father since the very beginning. He was crying. "What is going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. Zachary looked up. He didn't look sad, he looked energized. "Hey Vic, sad day, huh? But business never sleeps." "Get your feet off his desk," I snapped. He laughed. "It's my desk now, Vic. I'm the eldest male heir, that's how it works." Samantha turned around. "Victoria, darling, do you know the square footage of this room? We're thinking of knocking down the wall between here and your office. Make a master suite. Maybe put in a wet bar." I stared at her in horror. "Our father died 6 hours ago. And you're measuring for a wet bar." "Grief affects everyone differently," Samantha said dismissively. I nest. I looked at Peter. He looked broken. "Peter, are you okay?" Zachary interrupted. "Oh yeah, about Peter. We're letting him go." My heart stopped. "What?" "He's old school," Zachary said, shrugging. "We need fresh blood. I have a friend from the club, marketing genius. He's going to take over the chief of staff role. We need to rebrand. Peter here, he's just too dusty." "You can't fire Peter," I said, my voice rising. "He knows where every skeleton is buried. He knows the operations better than anyone. He is essential." "He was essential to Dad," Zachary said. "Not to me. I've already told him to pack his box. He needs to be out by 5. He threw a file onto the floor. It slid across the carpet and hit my shoe. It was a manifest for our trucking fleet. "And while we're at it," Zachary continued, pointing at the file, "why do we have so many trucks? It's overhead. Maintenance, insurance, drivers complaining. It's a headache." "Those trucks are the business, Zachary," I said slowly. "We are a logistics company. We move things." "Boring," he said. "I was thinking we sell the fleet. Outsource the actual driving to third-party contractors. We just keep the brand name. Pure profit. We could liquidize about $50 million in assets if we sell the trucks fast." "You want to sell the core of the business?" I asked, astounded by his stupidity. "Think of the cash injection," Samantha chimed in. "We saw this villa in Tuscany last summer. Historic, beautiful, we could use it as a corporate retreat for team building." "A villa," I whispered. "You want to sell our fleet to buy a vacation house." "Corporate retreat," she corrected. "And yes, we deserve it. It's been a stressful year." They kept talking, but their voices sounded distant, like they were underwater. They were discussing destroying my father's legacy, firing his most loyal friend, and gutting the company, all to fund their lavish lifestyle. They threw another file on the floor, then another. They were literally trashing the office. "This paperwork is garbage," Zachary said. "We're going digital. Peter, hurry up with that box. I don't want you here when the cleaners come." I looked at Peter. He was trembling. He was holding a picture frame, a photo of him and my father fishing. It was the only thing he was taking. I looked at Zachary. He was checking his reflection in the window, fixing his hair. I realized then that there was no reasoning with them. There was no appealing to their better nature, because they didn't have one. They were greedy, stupid, and cruel. They weren't mourning a loss. They were celebrating a windfall. That was the moment I stopped hoping. I stopped trying to be the sister who held it all together. Something inside me clicked off. The emotional attachment, the desire for their approval, it just died. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I looked at the manifests scattered on the floor. I looked at Peter's tear-stained face. "Okay," I thought, "you want to play king. You want to burn it all down for a villa in Italy. I won't stop you." In fact, I decided right then and there, standing in the wreckage of my father's office, that I would hand them the matches. I stood there for another minute, listening to them plan their renovations. I felt a scream building in my throat. I wanted to yell at them. I wanted to shake Zachary until his teeth rattled. I wanted to tell him he was a fool who would bankrupt us in 6 months. But I didn't. I took a deep breath. I forced my hands to uncurl from fists. I smoothed down my skirt. Silence. That was my new weapon. If I fought them now, they would get defensive. They would dig in. They would lock me out completely before I could make my move. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to feel arrogant. I walked over to the floor and knelt down. I picked up the manifests Zachary had thrown. I stacked them neatly. "You're right," I said. My voice was calm, steady. Even I was surprised by how normal I sounded. Zachary stopped talking. He looked at me suspicious. Yes, I lied. "The fleet is a headache. Maintenance costs are up 12% this year. Outsourcing might be modern." Zachary grinned. He looked at Samantha. "See. Even the workhorse gets it." "And Peter," I said, turning to the old man. I kept my face blank, but I caught his eye. I stared at him intensely, willing him to understand. "Zachary is the CEO now. It's his decision." Peter looked at me. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw that I wasn't agreeing, I was positioning. He had worked with me for 10 years. He knew my poker face. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "I understand," Peter said, his voice shaky but dignified. "I'll be going then." "Leave your keycard on the desk," Zachary said, not even looking at him. Peter placed the card on the mahogany wood. He walked to the door. "I'll walk you out, Peter," I said. "I need to get some fresh air anyway." "Fine," Zachary said, waving his hand. "Don't be long. I need you to order catering for the wake, something high-end. No finger sandwiches." "Of course," I said. "Lobster and caviar, I'll handle it." I walked out of the office with Peter. We walked down the long hallway in silence. We passed the cubicles where employees were crying, whispering about my father. We got to the elevator. The doors closed, trapping us in the metal box. As soon as we were alone, Peter slumped against the wall. "They're going to destroy it, Victoria. 40 years of work, gone." "No," I said firmly, "they aren't." He looked at me. "You heard him. He wants to sell the fleet. He fired me. He's going to run this place into the ground." "Let him," I said. Peter frowned. "What?" "Let him take the crown," I said. "Let him sit in the big chair. Let him fire people. Let him sign the papers." "Victoria, are you crazy?" "He thinks he's a king," I said, "but he doesn't know how to rule. He has debts, Peter, personal debts. I've seen his mail. I've seen the notices from the casinos." Peter's eyes widened. "And there is something else," I said. Dad knew Zachary was reckless. He left instructions, but they only work if Zachary proves he is incompetent." "The video?" Peter asked in a whisper. "The video," I confirmed. "And the claws." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. "Go home, Peter," I said softly. "Don't pack your things, just take the picture. Leave everything else exactly where it is." "You'll be back. How do you know?" he asked. "Because Zachary is going to hang himself," I said, "and I'm going to provide the rope." I walked him to his car. I watched him drive away. Then I turned and looked back at the towering glass building of Vance Logistics. I felt a strange sense of calm. For years, I had been the shield, protecting the company from Zachary's mistakes. I had fixed his errors, hidden his laziness, and cleaned up his messes. No more. I was done cleaning. I went back upstairs. Zachary and Samantha were still in the office, laughing. They were drinking my father's expensive scotch, a bottle he had been saving for his retirement. Did the old guy cry? Zachary asked, pouring another glass. He's gone, I said simply. Good riddance, Samantha said. I sat down at my desk, the one in the smaller office next door. I turned on my computer. I didn't start organizing the funeral catering. Instead, I opened the secure banking portal. I logged into my personal accounts. I looked at my savings. I looked at the trust fund my grandmother had left me, which I had never touched. I looked at the performance bonuses I had saved for a decade. It was a lot of money. Not enough to buy the company, but enough for what I needed to do. Then I opened the company's debt ledger. I found the loans Zachary had taken out against his future inheritance. The ones he thought were secret. I stared at the screen. If Zachary wanted the crown so badly, I would let him take it. And then I would watch the weight of it break him. I started typing. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I worked with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. They thought I was the victim. They thought I was the sad, lonely sister who would fade into the background. They had no idea that while they were planning a party, I was planning a coup. The silence in my office was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with the sound of keys clicking, sealing Zachary's fate with every stroke. The applause for Zachary finally died down. He stood at the podium, wiping a fake tear from his eye, looking humble. He had just finished a speech about how he would carry on our father's legacy, though everyone who really knew the business knew he planned to sell it off piece by piece. Samantha was beaming in the front row. She was already mentally spending the money. Then, the lights in the cathedral dimmed. A low hum filled the room as a massive projection screen slowly descended behind the altar. It was standard for funerals of high-profile men in our city. Usually, this was the moment for a touching slideshow. Pictures of my father holding us as babies, fishing with Peter, shaking hands with mayors, cutting ribbons at new warehouses. Set to sad violin music, Zachary stepped back from the podium, looking pleased. And now, he said into the microphone, a tribute to the man who started it all. He walked down the steps and sat next to Samantha. He leaned over and whispered, I told the video guys to focus on the early years. Makes me look like the natural successor. The screen flickered to life, but there was no music. There were no baby pictures. It was a video of my father. He was sitting in his office. He was wearing his favorite navy suit. He looked healthy, strong. This must have been recorded weeks ago, perhaps a month before he died. He looked directly into the camera lens. His blue eyes were sharp, piercing, and cold. The audio cracked over the cathedral speakers. Hello, everyone, my father's voice boomed. It echoed off the high stone ceilings. It sounded like he was in the room with us. The crowd gasped softly. It was eerie. If you are watching this, the video continued, then I am dead. And my son, Zachary, has just given a speech about how much he loved me and how he is ready to lead Vance Logistics. On the screen, my father leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. He let out a dry, humorless chuckle. But we are in a church, my father said, and in a church we must tell the truth, so let's tell the truth about Zachary. Zachary froze in the pew, his smile vanished. He looked around nervously, as if looking for a remote to turn it off. Zachary, my father said on the screen, you have spent the last 15 years waiting for me to die. You didn't want my wisdom. You wanted my chair. You wanted the title, but a title doesn't make you a leader. Competence makes you a leader. The screen shifted. It wasn't just my father talking anymore. Documents started appearing on the screen next to him, scanned images, clearly legible for the hundreds of people in the pews. Let's review your resume, son, my father said. First, a logo appeared, Club Velocity. 2018, my father narrated. You wanted to open a nightclub. You said it was a sure thing. I gave you $2 million in seed money. You spent half of it on a launch party with celebrities who didn't know your name. The club closed in 8 months, bankruptcy. A collective murmur went through the crowd. I heard a few people whispering. Zachary stood up. Turn it off, he hissed at the tech guy in the back. This is a mistake, turn it off. The tech guy didn't move. He looked terrified, but he kept the video playing. I had spoken to him earlier. I had told him that this was my father's last wish. The screen changed again. A picture of a vintage car restoration garage. 2020, my father continued. You wanted to restore classic cars. You bought 20 rusted frames. You hired 3 mechanics. You never sold a single car. You used the shop to store your own toys. Loss, $1.5 million. This isn't real, Zachary shouted, turning to the crowd. He was sweating now. My father was sick. He wasn't in his right mind when he made this. He had dementia. I am of sound mind and body, the video father said, as if answering him in real time. I am just tired of the lies. The screen flashed again. Invoices, consulting fees. 2023, my father said. You hired branding consultants. You paid them $500,000 to design a new logo, a logo we never used. You took kickbacks from the firm. I saw the deposits in your personal account, Zachary. I didn't say anything then. I was watching. I was testing you. The cathedral was deadly silent now. No one was looking at their phones. No one was coughing. All eyes were glued to the screen. The employees, the truck drivers, the warehouse managers, the shift supervisors were leaning forward. They were seeing the truth for the first time. They were seeing that the prince was naked. You failed every test, my father said. His voice dropped an octave. It wasn't angry. It was disappointed, which made it worse. You treat this company like a piggy bank. You treat our people like servants. You think respect is something you inherit like a watch. But you are wrong. Samantha was pulling on Zachary's sleeve. Do something, she whispered loudly. He's humiliating us. I'm trying, Zachary snapped. He ran toward the tech booth in the back. Cut the power, I am the CEO. I order you to cut the power. But the video was projected from a laptop that wasn't plugged into the wall. It kept playing. My father's face returned to the full screen. He leaned forward, staring right at where Zachary had been sitting. You thought I didn't know about the debts, Zachary. The gambling. The bad investments you tried to hide. You thought I was just an old man pushing paper. But I built this empire by counting every penny. And I counted yours. I sat perfectly still. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Peter. He was standing in the aisle next to me. He was smiling through his tears. He planned this, Peter whispered. He planned it all. Watch, I said softly. The best part is coming. On the screen, my father held up a piece of paper. It was a legal document. You see, son, my father said, I knew you would try to take over. I knew you would push your sister aside. Victoria, who has worked every day for 10 years while you slept in. So I added a clause to the company bylaws. A clause you never bothered to read because you were too busy measuring the office for a wet bar. Zachary had stopped running. He stood in the middle of the center aisle, breathing heavy, staring up at the giant image of the father he thought he had outsmarted. He looked small. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and was waiting for the punishment. And the punishment was just beginning. The image on the screen zoomed in. It showed a document titled Promissory Note and Shareholder Agreement. At the bottom of the page was Zachary's signature. It was big, loopy, and arrogant. He had signed it with a flourish, probably without reading a single word of the fine print. My father's voice came back, sharp and clear as a bell. Clause 4, he said. A red box appeared on the screen, highlighting a paragraph of text. My father read it out loud. If the total personal debt owed by Zachary Vance to the company or the estate exceeds $6 million at the time of my death, he shall immediately forfeit all executive voting rights, all equity, and any claim to the CEO position. The crowd gasped. It was a poison pill, a trap set specifically for a greedy son. Zachary stared at the screen. His mouth fell open. That's not legal, he stammered. That's not enforceable. I had 3 different law firms review it, Zachary, the video father said. It is ironclad. You signed it 3 years ago when you asked for the money to bail out your failed real estate project in Miami. You thought it was just paperwork. You thought I would never call the loan. The screen shifted to a spreadsheet. It was a simple calculation. Loan 1, nightclub. $2 million loan 2, car shop. $1,500,000 loan 3, Miami real estate. $2,200,000 miscellaneous personal expenses billed to company. $500,000 total debt. $6,200,000, the number flashed in red. $6.2 million. You are over the limit, son, my father said, by $200,000. Samantha stood up. She looked frantic. Wait, she yelled, forgetting she was in a church. The inheritance. He inherits half the company. That's worth $300 million. Just deduct the debt from the inheritance. He still has plenty of money. She was doing the math in her head. She didn't care about the company or the job. She just wanted to make sure they were still rich. My father in the video seemed to anticipate this question. He smiled. It was a cold smile. I know what your wife is thinking, my father said. She's thinking, just pay it off with the inheritance. But read the clause again. The red box on the screen moved down. In the event of forfeiture due to excessive debt, the debtor's share of the inheritance shall be used to repay the company first. Any remaining equity is frozen for a period of 5 years, during which the debtor has no access to funds and no role in the company. Frozen, my father repeated. For 5 years, you don't get a dime, Zachary, not until you prove you can live without it. And since you have no job and no skills, good luck. Zachary looked like he was going to vomit. He grabbed the back of a pew to steady himself. These weren't gifts, Zachary, my father said, his voice hard. I told you, these were loans. You treated my money like water. You thought the well was bottomless. But the well has run dry. The silence in the cathedral was heavy. It was the sound of a dynasty crashing down. Zachary looked at Samantha. Sam, we have savings, right? We can pay the 200,000. If we get it under 6 million, the clause doesn't apply. We just need to pay off 200 grand right now. Samantha looked at him with disgust. Savings? Zachary, you bought a boat last month. You told me the trust fund would cover it. We don't have 200,000 liquid cash. We have to find it, Zachary yelled. He looked at his friends in the front row, the guys he partied with. Mike, Steve, loan me 200 grand. I'll pay you back double in a week. I just need to get under the cap. Mike and Steve looked away. They checked their phones. They suddenly found the floor very interesting. Rats deserting a sinking ship. No one is going to lend you money, Zachary, my father said from the screen, because everyone knows you don't pay people back. Then, the video image changed again. My father leaned closer to the camera. His expression softened just a little bit. However, he said, there is a provision for redemption. If the debt is paid in full, not by you but by a third party before the reading of the will, then the company remains in family hands. Zachary's head snapped up. A third party? He looked around the room wildly. Who paid it? Did anyone pay it? He looked at Samantha. She shook her head. He looked at his rich friends. They shook their heads. There is no one, Zachary whispered. I'm ruined. Actually, my father said, the audit was completed this morning, at 8 a.m. The screen wiped to black for a second, then a new document appeared. It was a bank receipt, a wire transfer. Amount. $6,200,000 status. Paid in full. The crowd gasped again. Someone had paid it. Someone had saved the company. Zachary's eyes widened. A look of hope washed over his face. Someone paid it. Who? Who is my angel investor? He started laughing, a manic, hysterical laugh. See, I told you, someone knows my value, someone knows I'm worth it. Who was it? Was it Uncle Jerry? He looked at the screen, waiting for the name of his savior. My father's voice came one last time. The debt has been purchased, my father said. And with it, the controlling stake of Vance Logistics. The new owner of your debt is the new owner of you. The name on the receipt zoomed in. It wasn't Uncle Jerry, it wasn't a bank. Payer, Victoria Vance. The name hung on the giant screen in bold black letters. Victoria Vance. Zachary stopped laughing. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. He turned slowly, his neck stiff, to look at me in the front pew. I didn't look down. I didn't hide. I stood up. I smoothed my dress. I picked up my purse. I looked him dead in the eye. You, he whispered. His voice cracked. You don't have $6 million. You're just the secretary. You make a salary. I'm the chief operating officer, I corrected him, my voice calm and carrying through the silent church. And I have been saving my salary, my bonuses, and my dividends for 10 years. I didn't buy boats, Zachary. I didn't buy nightclubs. I invested. I lived in a small apartment. I drove a used car. I saved everything. I walked out of the pew and stepped into the aisle facing him. I didn't inherit this empire, I said, loud enough for the back rows to hear. I purchased it. The crowd erupted into whispers. I could see the employees nodding. I saw the union rep, the one I had negotiated with, give me a thumbs up. They knew who really ran things. Zachary shook his head, denial written all over his face. No, this is a trick. Dad wouldn't let you do this. Dad set it up, I said. On the screen, my father spoke his final words. Victoria, the recording said. I looked up at the video of my father. For the first time, he looked proud. He wasn't smiling, but his eyes were warm. I was hard on you, my father said to the camera. I ignored you sometimes. I let Zachary take the spotlight because I wanted to see if he would step up. But I also watched you. I watched you fix his messes. I watched you stay late. I watched you earn the respect of the men and women who work for us. He paused. Leadership isn't given, Victoria. It is taken. If you are seeing this, it means you had the guts to take it. It means you used your own money to save the family name. You are the only one worthy of this chair. My father leaned back. The video was ending. The keys to the executive safe are in my desk drawer, my father said. The code is your birthday. Then he looked straight at the lens, his face turning stern again. And Victoria? Yes, Dad, I whispered. Fire him. The screen went black. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy and final. I looked at Zachary. He looked like a ghost. The arrogance was gone. The posture was gone. He was just a man in a suit that was too expensive for him, standing in the ruins of his own life. I reached into my bag. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. I walked toward him. My heels clicked on the stone floor. Click, click, click. It was the only sound in the cathedral. Zachary, I said. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Vic, wait. Let's talk about this. We're family. We can work something out. I can be your VP. I can be the face of the company, and you can run the back end. Like always, we're a team, right? I stopped 2 feet in front of him. We were never a team, I said. I was the engine, you were the anchor. I held out the envelope. What is this? He asked, his hands trembling as he took it. Open it, I said. He opened the flap. He pulled out the papers inside. He stared at the top page. Notice of termination. Effective immediately. You're firing me, he choked out. At our father's funeral. You fired Peter 3 days ago while Dad's body was still warm, I said coldly. Consider this poetic justice. But how will I live? He asked. The clause, my inheritance, is frozen. Read the next page, I said. He shuffled the papers. Debt repayment schedule. I bought your debt, Zachary, I explained. Which means you owe me $6.2 million. I'm not as generous as Dad. I expect monthly payments. I've set up a payment plan for you. It's based on a minimum wage income, which is what you'll likely be earning. You can't do this, he whispered. Tears were streaming down his face now. Real tears, tears of fear. It's done, I said. I turned my back on him. I looked at the congregation. I looked at the hundreds of people staring at me. The funeral is over, I announced calmly. Thank you all for coming. The reception will be held at the main warehouse. Everyone is invited. I started walking down the aisle toward the exit. I hadn't taken 5 steps when the chaos started. It wasn't Zachary who screamed. It was Samantha. She had been standing there frozen, processing the math. No inheritance. No CEO salary. $6 million in debt owed to me. She turned on Zachary like a viper. You lied to me, she shrieked. Her voice echoed horribly in the church. She shoved Zachary hard in the chest. He stumbled back, almost tripping over the priest's robes. Sam, please, Zachary begged, reaching for her. We can fix this. I can sue her. Sue her with what money? Samantha yelled. You're broke, you're worse than broke, you're in the hole. She pulled the giant diamond ring off her finger, the one Zachary had bought with company money 2 years ago. She threw it at him. It bounced off his chest and clattered onto the stone floor. I am not going to be the wife of a bankrupt loser, she screamed. I'm calling my lawyer. I want a divorce, and don't think you're getting the condo. That's in my name. She stormed down the side aisle, her heels clacking furiously. She didn't even look at me as she passed. I was invisible to her again, but this time, it was because she was fleeing the scene of the crime. Zachary stood alone at the altar. His friends had vanished. His wife had left him. His sister had fired him. He looked at me one last time as I walked away. Victoria, he shouted. I'm your brother. I stopped. I didn't turn around. I just spoke loud enough for him to hear. I know, I said. That's the only reason I'm not pressing charges for embezzlement. Be grateful, Zachary. I kept walking. As I passed the pews, people stood up. But they didn't leave. The truck drivers stood up. They took off their baseball caps. They nodded at me as I passed. Miss Vance, Jerry whispered. Boss, another driver said. They weren't bowing to a queen. They were acknowledging a captain. They knew the ship was safe now. I walked out of the heavy wooden doors of the cathedral and into the bright sunlight. The air was fresh. It smelled of rain and city pavement. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, the weight on my chest was gone. Peter was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. He was holding the car door open, the back door of my father's black sedan. Where to, Miss Vance? He asked. I looked at the car, then I looked at Peter. Peter, I said, you're rehired. With a 20% raise, Peter smiled. Thank you, Victoria, I assumed as much. And one more thing, I said. Don't open the door for me, I'm sitting in the front. We need to talk strategy on the way back. Peter's smile widened. He closed the back door and opened the front passenger door. Yes, ma'am. I got in. I buckled my seatbelt. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked in the side mirror. I saw Zachary stumbling out of the church. He sat down on the steps, burying his face in his hands. He looked small. He looked like a paper king who had been left out in the rain. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant. It was like remembering a childhood scrape. It hurt, but it was over. He had made his choices. He had chosen greed over family. He had chosen arrogance over work. I turned my eyes to the road ahead. The drive back to the office was quiet, but it was a good quiet. We drove past the main distribution warehouse on the edge of the city. I saw the trucks lined up at the loading docks. They were massive, powerful machines, painted in our company colors, blue and silver. They were moving. Forklifts were buzzing back and forth. Drivers were checking their clipboards. The business was alive. It looks good, I said softly. It looks safe, Peter added. We went up to the executive suite. The cleaners had already been there. They had removed the mess Zachary and Samantha had made. The manifests were picked up. The trash was gone. I walked into my father's office. It felt different now. It didn't feel like a shrine anymore. It felt like a workspace. I sat down in the big leather chair. It was a little too big for me, but I adjusted the height. I swiveled it around to look out the window at the Chicago skyline. My phone buzzed on the desk. I looked at the screen. Notification. Samantha Vance has updated her relationship status to single. Notification. 12 missed calls from Zachary. Notification. 4 voicemails from Zachary. I didn't listen to them. I pressed a button on the side of the phone. Block caller. Then I called the security desk in the lobby. This is Victoria, I said. Please deactivate Zachary Vance's keycard immediately, and Samantha's. If they try to enter the building, escort them off the property. Politely but firmly. Understood, Miss Vance, the guard said. Congratulations on the promotion. Thank you, I said. I spent the rest of the afternoon working. I met with the department heads. I reassured the investors who had been panicked by the funeral drama. I authorized the payroll. I worked until the sun went down and the city lights came on. At 8 p.m., I finally went home. I didn't go to a villa in Tuscany. I went to my apartment. It was clean, quiet, and mine. I took a hot shower. I washed off the funeral, the betrayal, the anger. I put on my pajamas and made a cup of tea. I sat on my couch and looked at the photo of my father I kept on the mantel. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I fired him. I felt a sense of closure. My father hadn't been perfect. He had enabled Zachary for too long. But in the end, he had given me the tool I needed. He had given me a chance to fight. And I had won. I crawled into bed. Usually my mind would be racing. I would be worrying about the servers, or the union contracts, or what Zachary was going to break next. I would stare at the ceiling for hours, grinding my teeth. But tonight, my mind was clear. The empire was safe. The parasites were gone. The work was in good hands, my hands. I realized then that leadership isn't something you inherit. It isn't a crown you put on your head. It's a weight you carry, and if you aren't strong enough, it will crush you. Zachary was crushed. I was just getting started. I closed my eyes. The sheets felt cool and soft. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel like the victim. I didn't feel like the invisible sister. I felt like the CEO. And for the first time in years, I slept. I slept deeply, peacefully, without a single dream, until the sun came up the next morning.